Okay, hi guys. We are back with a read aloud. It is very late for me, but I needed a quiet house. It is 11:40 and funny story, I just recorded a 20-minute read aloud and the whole entire time it wasn't recording me. I mean, it recorded me, but it recorded this. If you guys know this from school, it recorded this thing and it was pointed down to the ground. So that was fun. Okay. So this is about a 17-minute read aloud, so get comfy. And we left off with him getting ready to choose a dog to enter into the contest. Many of you guys picked a little Anne, and we're about to find out if it was little Anne or not. Okay. The next morning when I stepped outside the tent, I saw men everywhere. They were combing and brushing their dogs and getting them pruned for the beauty contest. Beautiful combs and brushes were used to brush expensive oils into their glossy hair. Going over to my dogs, I stood and looked at them. I started to untie old Dan. Taking a closer look at him, I could see he could never win a beauty contest. His face and ears were a mess of old scars, caused from the many fights with old tough coons and bobcats. I held his head in my hands and felt sorry for him, but loved him that much more. I looked at little Anne over and over and couldn't see any scars. I laughed because I knew why. She was too smart to walk up into the face of a fight. She'd wait until old Dan took hold and then dart in. I untied her rope and walked her over to our tent. My father and grandfather were gone. No doubt they were over in some tent visiting old friends and making new ones. Looking around to find something I could use to groom my dog, I saw Grandpa's open suitcase. There, right on top, was the very thing I needed: his beautiful, bone handled hairbrush and his ivory comb. Picking them up, I turned them over and over in my hand. Little Anne stood looking at me. Impulsively, I reached down and raked her from shoulder to hip with the brush. She seemed to like it. I knew I shouldn't do it, but I decided to use them. Knowing I had no oils, I got some butter from our grocery box. With the homemade butter and Grandpa's hair set, I brushed her until she shone. All the time I was grooming her, she tried to lick the butter from my hands. The job completed, I stepped back and inspected her. I was surprised at the change. Her short red hair glistened and every one was in perfect place. Shaking my finger at her, I said, "If you lay down and roll, I'll wear you out," although I knew I wouldn't. Hearing a lot of movement outside, I looked out. Men were setting their dogs on a long table which had been built in the center of the campground. Leading little Ann to it, I picked her up and set her on the table too. I told her to act like a lady. She wagged her tail as though she understood. I untied the rope and stepped back. After the dogs were all lined up, the judge started. 4 judges walking around and around the table, looking at them from all angles. When one of them would point at a hound, he was taken down and eliminated from the contest. Dog after dog was disqualified. Little Ann was still on the table. My eyes were wide, my throat dry, and my heart thumping. One judge stood in front of little Ann. My heart stopped too. Reaching over, he patted her on the head. Turning to me, he asked, "This your dog?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded my head. He said, "She's a beautiful hound." He walked on down the line. My heart started beating again. There were 8 dogs left. Little Ann was still holding her own. Then there were 4. I was ready to cry. 2 more were taken down. Little Ann and a big Walker hound owned by a Mr. Kyle were the only ones left. The judges couldn't seem to make up their minds. Everyone started shouting, "Walk 'em! Walk them!" I didn't know what they meant. Mr. Kyle and I were told to go to one end of the table. Our dogs were placed at the other end. Mr. Kyle snapped his fingers and called to his dog. The big hound started walking toward his master. What a beautiful sight it was. He walked like a king. His body was stiff and straight, his head high in the air. His large muscles quivered and jerked under his glossy coat. But something went wrong. Just before he reached the end, he broke his stride, turned, and jumped down from the table. A low murmur ran through the crowd. It was my turn. 3 times I tried to call to little Ann. Words just wouldn't come out. My throat was too dry. The vocal cords refused to work, but I could snap my fingers. That was all I needed. She started toward me. I held my breath. There was silence all around. As graceful as any queen, with her head high in the air and her long red tail arched in a perfect rainbow, my little dog walked down the table. With her warm gray eyes staring straight at me, on she came. Walking up to me, she laid her head on my shoulder. As I put my arms around her, the crowd exploded. During the commotion, I felt hands slapping me on the back and heard the word congratulations time after time. The head judge came over and made a speech. Handing me a small silver cup, he said, "Congratulations, son. It was justly won." The tears came rolling. I gathered my dogs up in my arms and walked to our tent. Grandpa followed, proudly carrying the cup. That evening, the head judge stepped out on the table. He had a small box in his hand and he shouted, "Over here, men! I have some announcements to make." We all gathered round. In a loud voice, he said, "Gentlemen, the contest will start tonight. I'm sure most of you men have been in these hunts before. For those of you who haven't, I will explain the rules. Each night, 5 sets of dogs will be taken out to hunt. A judge will go along with each pair of hounds. Every morning, the judges will turn in that night's catch. The 2 hounds that tree the most coons will qualify for the championship runoff. The other 4 sets will be eliminated from the hunt. Of course, if there is a tie, both sets will qualify. On the following nights, only those hounds tying the first night's score or getting more will be in the runoff. Now, gentlemen, this hunt must be carried out in a sportsmanlike way. If the coon is treed where he can't be caught, such as in a bluff, it will not be counted. You must catch the coon, skin it, and turn the hide over to your judge. You are allowed to take an axe, a lantern, and a gun with bird shot, which you can use to get a coon out of a tree. 25 sets of hounds have been entered into the hunt. In this box I have 25 cards. Everyone in the contest will now line up for the drawing. The card you draw will tell you what night your coon is to hunt. Your coon hounds are to hunt. Walking along in the line, I noticed the beautiful red coats, the caps, and the soft leather boots worn by other hunters. I felt out of place in my beta blue overalls, old sheepskin's coat, scuffed and worn out shoes, but to the wonderful men, it made no difference. They treated me like a man and even talked to me like a man. When it came to my time to draw, my hand was shaking so hard I could hardly get it in the box. I pulled the card out. I saw I had drawn the 4th night. After the hunters had left, we stood around our campfires, sipping strong black coffee and listening to the baying of the hounds. Time after time, we heard the tree bark. Once 2 hounds came close to the camp, hot on a trail. We listened to their steady bawling. All at once, they stopped. After several minutes of waiting, a hunter said, "You know what? That old coon took to the river and in some way fooled those dogs." Another one said, "Yes, sir, he sure has." A friendly hunter looked at me. "You think he could have fooled your dogs?" Thinking this question over, I said, "You know, sometimes when I'm hunting way back in the mountains or down in the river, I sing a little song I made up to myself. One of the verses goes like this. You can swim the river, old Mr. Ringtail, and play your tricks one by one. It won't do any good, old Mr. Ringtail. My little Ann knows every one." The hunters roared with laughter. Some slapped me on the back. Tired and sleepy, but with a smile on my face, I went off to bed. The next morning, two blue tick hounds from the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee came out in the lead, with 3 big coons to their credit. The other 4 sets were eliminated. The following morning, all 5 sets of dogs were eliminated. None had even tied the blue ticks, although 2 sets had gotten 2 coons, and one of these had treed a third in a bluff. That day, while eating dinner, my grandfather asked me if my dogs had ever treed 3 coons in one night. I said, "Yeah, 4 different times, but that's all." "Where do you think we should hunt on our night?" Papa asked. I told him if we could get our judge to go with us in a buggy, we'd be better off if we could go far downriver and get out of the range where other dogs had hunted. He said, "That's a good idea. I'll go see the judge about it." While I was washing the dishes, Grandpa said, "I think I'll shave." I should have left the tent then, but I wasn't done with my dishwashing. With a pin, Grandpa hung a small mirror on the tent wall. After much snorting, mumbling, and scrubbing his face this way and that, the job was completed. Dabbing a little water on his iron gray hair, he reached in for the brush and comb. From the corner of my eye, I watched him. I tried to clean his beautiful brush, but hadn't been able to get all the short red hairs from it. With 2 fingers, Grandpa pulled some of the hair from the bristles. Holding it up in front of him, he looked over it carefully. Then, bending over closer to the mirror, peeking over his glasses, he inspected his head, straightened it up. He looked at the brush again. Turning around quickly, he looked straight at me and said, "Say, young—" Not waiting for any more, I scooted through the door. Crawling under the buggy, I lay down between my dogs. I knew he wouldn't be mad at me, but it'd be best to stay away for a while. The third night, the blue ticks were tied by 2 black and tan hounds from the Bayou country of Louisiana. All that day I was restless. I prowled through the camp. Every little while I would go and see how old Dan and little Ann were. Once I took 2 weenies from our groceries. I heated them and gave them to my dogs for a treat. Old Dan swallowed his down in one gulp and looked at me as if to say, "Is that all?" Little Ann ate hers in a ladylike way. I could have sworn I'd seen a small grin on her face. Grandpa was hopping around like a grasshopper, going here and there. Once, passing tent, I heard his voice. I knew he was bragging on my dogs. I smiled to myself. Another hunter stopped me and asked, "Is it true that your hounds have treed over 6 coons in one night, 3 up in one tree? Or is that old man just blowing off steam?" I told him my grandfather had a little steam, but he was the best grandpa boy ever had. He patted me on the head, turned, and walked away laughing. Okay, my eyes were drying out. I had to put my glasses on. Okay, we are starting on chapter 16 now. In the afternoon, our judge came over and introduced himself. He told us he'd be going along with us that night. About sundown, we piled in our buggy and drove a few miles downriver. I noticed that other humans were doing the same thing. Everyone was trying to get away from the already hunted territory. It was dark by the time Grandpa stopped. I untied the ropes from my dogs. Little Ann reared up on me and whined. Old Dan walked off a few yards, stretched his body, and dragged his claws through the soft bottom soil. Opening his mouth, he let out one big loud bawl and then disappeared in the thick timber. Little Ann was right on his heels. We took off after them. Grandpa got nervous. He said to me, "Don't you think you ought to whoop to him?" I told him to wait a little while. There'd be plenty of time for whooping. He snorted and said, "Huh." He thought a hunter always whooped to his dogs. "I do, Grandpa," I said, "but not before they strike a trail." We walked we walked on. Every now and then we'd stop and listen. I could hear the loud snuffing of old Dan. Once we caught a glimpse of little Ann. She darted across an opening that was bathed in moonlight. She was as silent as a ghost and as quick as a flitting shadow. Papa said, "Sure is a beautiful night for hunting." The judge said, "You can't beat these Ozark Mountains, not for beauty. I don't care where you go." Grandpa started to say something. His voice was drowned out of the bell-like cry of little Ann. As if, oh, sorry, in a whisper, I said, "Come on. Come on, Dan. Come on. Hurry up and help her." As if in answer to my words, his deep voice hammered its way up through the river bottoms. I felt the blood tingling in my veins. That wonderful feeling that only a hunter knows crept over my body. Looking over at Grandpa, I said, "Now you can whoop." Jerking off his hat and throwing back his head, he let out a yell. "Ooh-wee!" It wasn't a whoop or a screech. It was about halfway in between. Everyone laughed. The coon was running upriver toward our campground. We turned and followed. I could tell by the dogs' voices that they were running side by side and they were hot on the trail. Closing my eyes, I could almost see them running. Bodies stretched to their fullest length, legs pounding up and down, white steam rolling from their hot breath in the frosty night. Grandpa got tangled up in some underbrush and lost his hat and his spectacles. It took us a while to find the glasses. Papa said something about getting them wired on the baling wire. Grandpa snorted and the judge laughed. The coon crossed the river and ran on upstream. Soon my dogs were out of hearing distance. I told Papa we better stay on our side of the river and keep going until we could hear them again. 20 minutes later, we had heard them coming back. We stopped. I think they crossed back to our side, I said. All at once, the voices of my dogs were drowned out by a loud roar. What in the world was that? Grandpa said. I don't know, the judge said. Reckon it was the wind or thunder? About that time we heard it again. The judge started laughing. I know what that is, he said. Those hounds have run that coon right back by our camp. The noise we heard was the other hunters whooping to 'em. Everyone laughed. A few minutes later, I heard my dogs bawl and treed. On reaching the tree, Papa ran his back under his coat. He pulled out Grandpa's gun. Well, that's a funny looking gun, the judge said. It's a 410 gauge pistol, isn't it? It's the very thing for this kind of work, Papa said. You couldn't kill a coon with it if you tried, especially if you're using birdshot. And it will do its sting, and it will do all it will do is sting his hide a little. At the crack of the gun, the coon gave a loud squall and jumped. My dogs lost no time in killing him. We skinned the coon, and soon we were on our way again. Next time my dogs treed, they were across the river from us. Finding a riffle, we pulled off our shoes and started across. Grandpa very gingerly started picking his way. His tender old feet moved from one smooth rock to another. Everything was fine until we reached midstream where the current was much swifter. He stepped on a loose round rock. It rolled down and down he went. As the cold river water touched his body, he let out a yell that could have been heard for miles. He looked so funny we couldn't keep from laughing. Papa and the judge helped him to his feet. Laughing every step of the way, we finally reached the other side. Grandpa kept going in his wet clothes until we reached the tree where the dogs were. After killing the coon, we built a large fire so Grandpa could dry his clothes. He'd get up as close to the fire as he could and then turn this way and that way. He looked so funny standing there with his long underwear steaming. I started rolling with laughter. He looked over at me and snapped, "What's so funny?" I said, "Nothing." "Well, why are you laughing?" he said. At this remark, Papa and the judge laughed until their eyes watered. Mumbling and grumbling, Grandpa said, "If you fellows were as cold as I am, you wouldn't be laughing." We knew we shouldn't be laughing, but we couldn't help ourselves. The judge looked at his watch. "It's after 3 in the morning," he said. "Do you think they'll tree another one?" Okay, I'm going to stop there. We don't have much to go. I don't know if you can see. Probably just have about a couple chapters here, a couple short chapters. And I am now going to tell you what you have to do to earn your points. So what you need to do is you need to comment below if you think that Old Dan and Little Ann are going to tree another coon or not. Okay, if you think they are or not. And then you also have to say why you think that. So you need to say either, yes, I think they'll tree another coon, or no, I do not. Now remember, they've already treed 2. So right now they're at 2. They have to be at 3 because they have to tie the first one or beat the first one, the blue tick hounds. And then the one that was the black and tans from Tennessee too. So they have to either tie them with 3 or beat them with 4 to qualify. So do you think they will or won't, and why or why not?